Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Miley, an IFS-informed certified trauma recovery coach. This show features interviews from survivors all over the world as they share their impactful story of thriving in their post-traumatic growth. We explore resources, tools, and coping skills to support the trauma survivor community. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. My name is Sarah Miley. I'm your host today, and I have with us today Delicia Niami. And she has brought to us today a beautiful new memoir that she's working with. So starting from her life story, her life has been trauma after trauma. The moment that she came out into the darkness, into this world that we call Earth. Her new memoir is part of a trilogy called Resilient AF, and the new memoir is called Kissing Asphalt. This propels you on a journey with the author from the age of 4, when she was kidnapped and taken to Baghdad, Iraq, along with her 7-year-old brother Niall by her estranged father. The moment that Niall and Delicia stepped into Iraqi soil, her mother immediately lost any and all rights to her children, but she never stopped fighting for them. After their father finally agreed to send them home to America, he completely abandoned her, leaving a sense of loss that would take her years to understand. Delicia overcame many challenges and traumas as she grew up here in America, including sexual and physical abuse and bullying. But ultimately, she found a sense of hope after discovering the music of the Go-Go's, dancing, and even an undeniable bond that she shares with her mother and brother. She shares her story now to show others that regardless of what happened to us in this lifetime, we always have the choice to find the light and choose positivity. Delicia, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so happy to have this conversation. You've had such a harrowing life story, so let's just jump right in. How have you gotten here? How have you landed here from where you've been as a young girl to where you are now?
Yeah, so firstly, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
And so from the time that I was young, I had constant abuse. And the funny thing is that I never even realized it until after writing the book. So it was interesting because the distributor told me, hey, we need to use the word abuse in the subtitle. And I'm like, I don't really think about that for a while. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. And so it's really brought me a lot of epiphanies. So my book, I decided to write my book to help others because I knew that I had endured so much in my life that if I could be happy, anybody can. And so the first book is Kissing Asphalt, like you said, and it takes you from the kidnapping when I was 4 and I was returned on my 5th birthday. And after that, like you said, my father completely abandoned us and I didn't see him again until I was 12. And that was in court. He had originally had my mother sign a piece of paper stating that she would never sue him for child support, that he was off the hook for taking us to Baghdad, just in case he ever decided to come back to the country. And he actually did come back to the country right before the Iran-Iraq war. He came back to the country unbeknownst to us because he never reached out or anything. But apparently my mother knew, and she did end up trying to sue him for child support. And this man was so not a father to me that, he didn't even know my birth date. So it was things like that that were really, and I was always kind of out there searching for another replacement because, as much as I've always said until I was probably about 47, 48 when all this hit me. I've always said that my mom was my mom and my dad. Like I didn't need him, but I didn't realize that my mother was abusive as well until I became an adult and wrote the book. And so it's a very interesting dynamic, but it takes you up through the age of 17. There's a chapter it's not an easy read, I'll tell you that, but I do have, flashes of light and joy throughout. I tried to pepper my joy throughout to show people that even as a child, I knew how to be resilient. And I don't know how, but there was some sort of angels guiding me or something. I don't know. Like I'm not a religious person, but there was something that was showing me what to do. I mean, even when I was being bullied in school, I would always tell myself, and I wrote this in the book, like, didn't matter what those mean kids say. Like, I know I'm a good person, and I remember like the times it would rain sometimes when I was a kid, and I would walk home from school after being bullied, and like, I have my thing, but I would put my umbrella away and I would dance in the rain, like, singing in the rain, and I would sing the lyrics, and I would literally dance and sing in the street just to find my joy, and so it was I didn't write about that in the book, but I did things like that. And and then this book kind of starts into what I coined the term as my framily. So my family hasn't been that great to me. My mother has been the closest thing in my family, and my brother probably the second closest, but he's not kind. So it's been very hard. I've always felt like I don't have a voice in this world. And so this book kind of taps into my family a little bit. And then the second book, and it ends with another traumatic event. And then the second book starts off with the aftermath of that traumatic event. And kind of it goes through, I live in Switzerland, and a whole bunch of really cool stuff that happens to me that when I become an adult, and then something happens at the end of the book. That one's called Not My Circus. And the third and final book is called The Queen of Silver Linings, and that of course has a little bit of trauma in it, but at the same time I talk about my journey to healing and the workshops I've done. I've always been a big self-help book girl. People used to come in and laugh at my bookshelf because that's all that would be there was self-help books, but who knows where I'd be without them, to be honest. So
Wow.
I have really been lucky in terms of how happy I truly am. And so the third book takes you through my plant medicine journey that I've done, breath work that I've done, just a variety of different things that I've done to try and heal myself. And some stuff works, and others has been very, very, very scary. I mean, uh, it hasn't come easy. The happiness and the joy has not come easy. I have had to go through some really dark times, but the most amazing thing that I have to say is I've never really felt true joy until recently, when somebody had read my book and it triggered her. And this was before we put a trigger warning in. And my whole point is that I want to help people, right? So I was really worried, and I'm like, I don't want to hurt people. I want to help people. So, and she was like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, I was rooting so hard for your little girl that I realized that my little girl needed help. And so to me, that was, I don't cry, right? So every single time I'm able to hear those words or help people in that way and know that they have another option, and that there's light at the end of the tunnel if they work hard enough. It's the first time in my life that I've ever truly felt this profound joy before. It's ironic, but it's amazing.
Yeah, that is beautiful. That's really beautiful. Triggering can be really hard for people, but sometimes it's almost like, why did that just trigger me? And now it might unleash a memory that they didn't even know that they had, or an issue that they didn't even consciously remember or were thinking about, or they thought that they had healed from it and that they had moved past it. A lot of people are looking to move on, right? Instead of moving forward, right? So they're like, ah, no, I've moved on from that. And then these things in our life come up and they do trigger, but they can oftentimes be very cleansing and very healing. So I'm so happy that you're getting that feedback from people. That's really excellent.
It
What
is.
ended up happening with your father? Was there ever consequences? Did he ever face any charges or anything like that? No.
Nope, never anything. And I was 12, and then, well, I don't want to give up the story, but I did meet him again at some point in my life. I won't tell you exactly when or what happened with us, but yeah, he passed away. October of 2021. So, and I didn't really know him at that time. I had already written the letter saying bye-bye. Enough is enough. So, I mean, the last straw for me, honestly, was there was one point we were having lunch, and I'm a very forgiving person, but we were having lunch, and he said to me, the one thing that's missing in my life is that I don't have anyone to call me dad. And
Mm,
I said, Hazem, I will never call you dad. You
mm,
were never a dad to me. You were a sperm donor. You never there. You never called me. And he said, I called Niall. And I was like, okay, but I'm not Niall. So, and then he looked at me in the eye and he said, to be honest with you, I just never thought about you.
mm.
And I was like, whoa, ouch. Okay, well, that was like one of my worst fears come true. So I even hung on a couple of years after that, but then it was enough is enough. I've learned that regardless of whether people are your blood or not, there's only so much abuse you can take.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If someone is manipulating you, abusing you physically or emotionally, having those no contact, no thank you, I'm not interested, don't talk to me, you're not a safe person. You have to do that for your own well-being. So that's very brave of you. I'm sure it was very difficult to walk through that.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, I know we talked about in the beginning a little bit like what prompted me to write this book was I had been told several psychics over a 20-year period that I should write a book about my life and it would be made into a movie. But I was never ready, right? I always felt depressed. I didn't really have a message to share with the world. I was like, okay, who wants to read about trauma, 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 trauma with no like happy ending? Come on, man. So I didn't have a happy ending and I didn't find that until book 3 when I'm doing the work that I'm doing. And so part of that was when I was 47, 48, I read a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Mhm.
And it gave me so many aha moments. Like people would always ask me, "Oh my gosh, you were kidnapped? That must have been so traumatic." And my response was always, "Oh no, I was 4. Like I don't remember." But reading that book, I remember I was listening to the audio book and I was probably a block or so from my house and I had to pull over because I realized that I had actually had PTSD for 44 years. And that from 4 to 48, I had no clue.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that was kind of the start of and then I immediately went home and looked him up and I saw they were having a workshop like within a month and I wrote them a letter and they squeezed me in. I didn't know they had a waiting list for a couple of years, but they squeezed me in and I went to Bessel's house and did a workshop with and after that workshop, it was like, I'm ready. And I started writing, and it was like it was really healing for me. So
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's what I mean with your book. Even though if someone finds it triggering, it can be really healing. And same when you're reading Body Keeps the Score, all of a sudden you're having this like, holy crap kind of a moment, but it ended up to be the thing that's like launching you into like this whole new, like stratosphere there. Wow.
exactly. And something else that just happened the day that my book accidentally came out the day before it was supposed to. It was kind of weird. This whole cosmic thing was, I had mentioned earlier that, my family's been really verbally and just kind of, I never felt like I had a voice. And I got into it with my brother, Niall, and we ended up, I told him, I'm not going to be abused by you anymore. I'm done. I'm not going to take this. I just can't. I can't do it anymore. And that night my book came out
Mm,
and it's just been so liberating and just like I can't tell you like how freeing it feels to let go of that. And I told myself, and I keep reminding myself, you keep ruminating about these things. He's my brother. I love him to bits, but he's not in a good spot in life, and he's never respected me, and he never will. And it comes a time where I have to have respect for myself,
mm,
and I can't write a series called Resilient AF and put it out there into the world and let him abuse me. I can't, so it was an amazing kind of aha, really epiphany, all at the same time that the book came out, that I like literally got home that night and I got an email saying, here's your ebook. I'm like, oh, that's a day early. So yeah, it was very interesting how the universe works sometimes.
You do write. So I was reading the book bio, and it says resilience isn't inherited. It's a hard-fought skill forged by our ability to pick up the broken pieces of our past and remake them into something new. Why is resiliency so important? How is it possible for trauma survivors to tap into resiliency?
Well, that's a great question. Um, I think resiliency is, let me just first back up and tell you kind of what my definition of resiliency is, right? So basically, what that says, picking up the pieces and making it into something better. So, and actually, a friend of mine who's part of my family, a sister from another mister, she's the one who came up with the name Resilient AF because she thought I should name my book title that, and I was like, wow, no, that's a good like series title, because everyone always tells me that I'm so resilient, but I think it really is so important to look at the negative or hard things that happen to us in this lifetime and take lessons from those things
Mm.
and maybe see it through a different lens or perspective so that we can take the lessons from it and even ask the hard questions if we have to. I don't know, I'm sure you know about DBT
Mhm.
and CBT, and I'm in a group, and I've learned so much about my behaviors and my triggers
Mm.
from DBT, and it's really helped me a lot in situations where I feel my intermittent explosive disorder coming up and bubbling. That's another thing I learned from Bessel's book that I had no idea about. So I think being able to utilize the tools that we have through therapy, and I'm not just talking about medication because I do not take medication. My body does not like it. And so I've been forced to find alternative therapies that can help me. So I think you have to stay strong, you have to stay positive no matter how hard things get, and you have to know that like you'll get through it
Mm.
even though it's going to be tough. You'll get through it even if you don't have, if you think you don't have a support system, there's always support in place. Like, I mean, I had a major thing happen. It's kind of like jumping into the third book, but my colon ruptured in 2020. And, you know, I have a colostomy bag for life now. And that's part of my first book is I talk about my uncle having a colostomy bag, going to visit him, throwing up in my mouth when he made me watch him change it, and saying to myself, God, please don't ever let me shit in a bag. And I remember this like very clearly. And, I've had to take this positive situation when I didn't feel like anybody in the world was supportive or knew what I was going through. And I found this amazing organization called Girls with Guts, and they had like a reach out thing, and all I did was tell them like, hey, I'm going through this. I started getting cards in the mail from Canada, from Australia, from the US, all over the place, like people wishing me well and telling me that I was a warrior spirit sister and all of this really cool stuff. And it made me realize like, even if we don't feel like we have a support system, we really just have to open our eyes because it's all around us. And the people, strangers care about me, I feel like sometimes more than my own brother. And so it's like this has really opened my eyes, this whole experience to that, and just being open and vulnerable has been really hard. Letting my walls down so that I can let the people in. I think those of us who have been traumatized have such a tendency to put these walls up to protect ourselves. And we're all so scared because we've been abandoned so many times, we've been abused so many times, we've been, whatever it is. But like, I think that if we're able to even take piece by piece and peek out of that wall a little bit here and a little bit there, that we'll see that there are really kind, caring, amazing people, strangers even in the world, that care. And it's a really eye-opening thing.
Yeah, and making room for them too. You're making room by getting rid of anyone who is toxic or who is abusive in your life. It makes more room for you to have positive experiences with people who are willing to put in the effort into the relationship and to love you for who you are. So I love that. Oh, that's really special. You talked already a little bit earlier about you being like noticing these things when you were a kid. Have you ever been able to link that back to anyone who maybe spoke over you or an ancestor or a grandparent who was really kind to you that made sure you had that worth?
Sadly, I didn't know my grandparents,
Mhm.
so my grandmother died before I was born, and she died at 39 from a brain aneurysm. And my grandfather I met once when I was in high school, but then it was the first time my mother had ever met him too, and then they ended up having a falling out, so I never got to meet him again, and now I think he's gone. But there are some relatives that, reach out to me from his side of the family on like ancestry.com and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Wow. That's
But yeah,
incredible.
I don't know. I think it was just something innate. It was like I can't explain it. It's almost like when I was, 16 and I first started driving. I do write about this in the book, that like my mom had bought me a car and it had retread brakes, and the she didn't know that. And when I was driving down a grade, the retread came off and hit the brake line. It was a Volkswagen Bug. And so I had no brakes and I was in the fast lane. And it was almost like my brain just left my body and my body knew what to do. And somehow, like, I downshifted, 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 got into the slow lane slow enough to be able to pull the emergency brake without hitting anyone, or and I had just started driving. Like, nobody taught me that in driver's ed, so I don't know where it comes from, but I think all of us have it in us, and that's kind of my message, is that we're all resilient AF. We just have to find that Wonder Woman strength from within and just be like, I got this.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've made it this far. Like if you're listening or watching today, you've at least made it to this day to watch this, right? And so there's those little kind of signs along the way. You've literally survived everything the world has thrown at you thus far if you're still watching this video or listening to this audio right now. So that's really, really cool. Delicia, thank you so much for sharing your life and sharing your memoir and your journey with us. As we know, we focus on resources here on the show. I mean, you've listed a lot of things. I'm going to try to link as many of them as you've said, but what would you say are some of like maybe like the top two most important resources or tools that were just really catalysts in your healing journey?
I would definitely say DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. It's been life changing for me. Mindfulness meditation has also been really, really life changing, to where people notice when I'm meditating and when I'm not. So it's really interesting to see that. And then Bessel's book, The Body Keeps the Score. It was just
Yeah.
mind blowing at times.
Yeah. And getting to be in his workshop, I'm sure was really helpful. Have you been able to, you talked a little bit about, understanding that the trauma is trapped in your body. I know I'm going off script, but I want to just come back to this before I let you go. Have you been successful in kind of reconnecting to your soma body, to that connection somatically? Have you done anything like that, somatic experiencing or somatic release or anything like that?
I have. I've done that, as well as breath work and things like that, that have allowed me to go. The breath work has been really huge in allowing me to go back and recall memories. Um, I also had a really crazy session doing toad venom one time. It was like, I don't remember it, but my brother was in the room with me, and he said he thought he was going to have to call the police because it sounded like a triple homicide. I just woke up and said, "Oh, my throat's so sore." But it was like 4 days of this, like, recalling all this stuff. And I think what happened was, like, I went to the underworld and just all my molesters are dead at this point, right? So I went down and I was just like unleashing my rage. And I don't know where this stuff, this is crazy what the little toad venom does. I'll tell you that much. It's
Yeah.
insane. And I think they actually DMT or something. And so I think there are some like, psychotherapy drugs that are actually based in that, but it's crazy, the whole drug thing and all that. I don't touch it, but like I've done the plant medicine in a real ritualistic kind of way that has been helpful, and especially with recalling memories so that I can go back and soothe my little girl if I need to, or, just hold her hand if I need to. And yeah, I can't give away too much because I'll talk about this in the next book when it comes out. But like, there was a big thing that happened when I was 30 that just rocked my world, and I did mushroom therapy that allowed me to go back and relive this situation, which was incredible, but it allowed me to see that like the person didn't suffer.
Mm.
So that was very helpful for me, because that was something I was always wondering, but I didn't really know. I never knew that that question existed from within.
Wow.
So that's the kind of stuff that plant medicine brings out. It's scary. It's really scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm somebody who's done a lot of drugs in my life, but that I like ayahuasca, I won't touch it. That scares me for some reason. My body's like, no. So I listen. I think it's super important to listen to your body,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
make sure you're doing whatever you're doing with somebody who is very well versed, whatever it is, breath work, whatever it is, because I'll tell you, breath work where
Mhm.
you're not doing any drugs, that's the deepest I've ever gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep,
I
same.
mean, it's incredible where our own breath can take us. It's
Mhm.
mind-boggling, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep, very, very true. Yeah, and obviously, the safety setting is very important in dealing with any kind of psychedelic drugs. Obviously, having someone who's safe to be there with you, and of course, the most important part of psychedelics is the afterwards, is the integration of what you saw, what you healed, what you processed, what memory came up, what released for you, and then having someone really solid who can help integrate that. And that's usually a therapist, a coach, a counselor, something like that. So, yeah, super important. But it's true, just getting these things out of our body wherever they might live is important. I love that you were able to tap into your rage, um because without that, you can't get to like the hurt parts that are underneath, because the rage just comes and kind of blocks it. And it's okay to be angry when stuff was done to you that was harmful and wrong and violent, and violated your sacredness and your value. So I'm really proud of you. You've done excellent.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Delicia, for joining us today. Tell people where they can find you, where they can find the book Kissing Asphalt. I'm going to link all your socials and all your websites and everything below in the show notes as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. So I'm on, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, Kobo, all these different wherever and if you're a Kindle reader right now, you can get it for free if you're a subscriber, or 99 cents until November 1st. So I don't know if hopefully this will air before then. I'm not
Mhm.
sure, but
Yes.
um and then I'm on, if you go on www.kissingasphalt.com,
Yes.
then I will actually sign a book and send it out to you. So if you order direct from me, I'll hand sign it and send it out in the mail myself. So I've
Beautiful.
been doing that. I did it to 80 of my pre-orders already. So they all have their books, and it's
Yay.
very exciting. And then of course on, TikTok and all the other social media places, Instagram and
All those ones. Excellent. I will link all that below for our viewers and our listeners so that they can reach out. Thank you again so much for being here. Good luck with the book. I'm so proud of your story, and I think it's going to really impact and help a lot of people. So I appreciate
thank
you
you
being
so
here.
much. And the other thing I want to open up to is just say, like, I know my book's a heavy read, and I told this to my pre-orders. Like, if anybody reads my book and they want to reach out to me and they have a question, I'm totally open to that. So if you just send me an email at kissingasphaltinfo@gmail.com, anything, like, I'm happy to answer anything.
Mm, beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for being available to people, especially if
Absolutely.
they're struggling while reading it. So excellent.
Thank you so much. I
You're
really
so
appreciate
welcome.
you.
Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and follow. For any information that was discussed in this podcast episode, check out the show notes below. Until next time, be well.